Umbujo Nindaway Maganinduk, Mashakado Kwayan Dao, Dicto Dem Gainin, Wasauksing Don Jaba, Adikmikshing Dida. Um, uh, Inwa, Nijomadewe, Nijomade Kwayan Dao, Minwa Miswandan, Somadewe. So hello everybody. Um, Greetings from. I'm sitting in a Tikmikshing today, in the community where I have primarily um, raised my children with my husband. We went out to different places from time to time for work, but I've always come back here to the community of Tikmikshing. And then I'm originally from Wasauksing, and that's about 2 hours south. Perry Sound is in the territory of of my ancestors down there in Wasauksing. So that's where I'm from. I'm also from the Caribou clan, and I am sharing teachings or I'm sharing information about teachings. I'm not sharing full teachings today. I'm not teaching full ceremony today, but really a bit of a history of how moon ceremony came back to the people, and a little bit about how it has evolved since it made its comeback to Anishinaabe as a ceremony to honor our relationship with our grandmother, the moon. So, is my audio okay? I feel like I'm talking very quietly, and thank you, Michaela. I see a thumbs up. so, and so it's a little weird. I'm sure all of you are adjusting to Zoom life, um, but it's a little weird not to have, not to be sitting in a circle like we normally would, not to hear each other's acknowledgments um, and so it's but yeah, so we're adjusting, and pray for the time that we can return to the comfort of being able to be in each other's company while we talk about these things. Okay, so having said that, I'm just as I was preparing for today, I'm thinking back to how these teachings came back into my life, and it the journey or the learning started back in the early 80s for me. So it was about 11, so about around 1982 or 83, that I became aware of places that my parents were starting to take my sister and I. And, when I stopped playing so much and started to be able to sit and be interested in what the adults were talking about a little more, especially the grandmothers and the aunties. um, I was first introduced to like a woman's circle at um, at Trent University, probably around 1984. Um, we went to the Elders Conference at Trent University, and um, sat with my mom in a big room. I think it was off to the side of their cafeteria. Um, but it was a big room. There was probably easily over close to 150 women in that room. Um, and some of them had their children with them, their babies and their little ones. And and that in that time, I got to hear um, Edna Mantwabi Asanikwe talk about and share some of what we call grandmother teachings. And so those grandmother teachings also included some information about um, not only our relationship to the moon, but it was told in the context of the creation story and how our grandmother and our mother, how close that relationship is. And we talked about um, she talked and shared about how grandmother moon um, in their movement, and in the cycle, how grandmother moon affects the water, how grandmother moon affects moon time, and how she helps with birthing. And so um, and so that was the beginning of beginning to hear and be able to um, be receptive and be able to start to absorb more of this kind of sharing amongst women primarily at that time. From different conferences like that, my parents also made their way to St. Charles, and a community started in the 70s um, by like-minded Anishinaabe who were reaching back for a ceremony, reaching back for to understand what it meant to be Anishinaabe. And so my family made their way there as well, where we were introduced to other Anishinaabe, from over into Manitoba, down to Minnesota and Wisconsin, east to the eastern seaboard. People were gathering in to uh, to learn more about ceremony. And so the full moon ceremony um, was introduced also around that time, in the mid 80s, around 80, 84, 85, um, that that we began to um, to learn about this ceremony under the teaching of a grandmother from Rosa River, Nojimabun. And and the ceremony was actually um, saved for her. It was her brother saved the knowledge of it, and when this grandmother became, ready to um, pick up that bundle, that knowledge bundle, he passed it on to her to be able to share with the people. And then in the early days of that renewal and revitalization of that ceremony, um, in the early days, it was very emotional. I feel like I'm going to cry right now. When I was 13 or 14, being introduced to the ceremony, I think at that time in the doing of it as a young woman, um, the significance of this work, of this ceremony and importance, it was a little lost on me at the, at that teen stage, that early part of my the fast life. But as I've grown and moved through various stages of womanhood, I really, really, um, I really, really appreciate, um, the gift of being able to um, have started to learn at that time. Um, and so at that time, she introduced to us the yellow cloth ceremony. And for those of you who have been able to join us, we've had some really big circles at Laurentian, and we've done the yellow cloth ceremony, and I've done that, you know, jointly with my sister, Gisons Manitowabi, and you know, Gisons inviting and bringing clients that she works with, um, friends, friends in the community who access services at Chikakmikwe, where she works in the traditional health program. And we have co co-led the ceremony as we as we've offered it in the last, well, prior to the pandemic, about a year and a half, I think we'd offered it together. And so that was really, really nice. And we've always had a pretty good turnout, even in the summer when most students have returned home. And in our winter ceremonies, especially the January ceremony where we open that to community, we've had a lot of participants, including our male relatives, so that they could come and participate in the ceremony. And that's one of the ways that the ceremony has evolved, in that we have included our male relatives so they can begin to understand their relationship with grandmother moon as well. So in the early days, when the yellow cloth um, ceremony was introduced to us, um, it was primarily just women gathered with a firekeeper. And once the fire was established and the leaders of that ceremony took over, the firekeeper would step back, um, and and the women would would pick up their role to lead that ceremony. It was a time for it was a time for women to have opportunity, um, to reclaim, I guess, opportunity too, right? To lead ceremony. We relied a lot um, on our uncles, on our grandfathers, on our fathers, on brothers to lead a lot of ceremony to that point. And then this was one ceremony that 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 women in particular um, um, were able to stand up and do healing work, um, for ourselves and supporting each other. Um, One of the things that you know that was part of that ceremony too, in terms of reclaiming voice, was um, to share the buffalo call, and the call to strengthen the buffalo, who is a helper to Koyuk, um, and a reminder to us by the hump on the buffalo's back about creation, about our role in creation as women, as mothers, as grandmothers, um, our, well, I guess not just role, but roles, our roles in creation. And and um, so it was an opportunity for many years, not just as a people, we had become silent, but as women experiencing other forms of oppression and violence, in our families, in our communities, and then you know, um, within the huge societal changes in the last 300 years. So um, so we had become shy or become timid or become um, afraid even to sound our voice. So participating in that buffalo call was a way to um, to release that and learn to express ourselves in with that call again, um, and to um, as well as honoring the buffalo who stands there, who stands for us. In particular, that buffalo stands at the western doorway and guards our life path through this physical life. But and so in being a guardian to life, we are also acknowledging and thanking the buffalo while we are learning to find our voice again. And so over the years, the ceremony has evolved. Like I said, so it started just with the women and a firekeeper, and then it it um, it began to as women were becoming stronger, and as our elders in on our lodge, I attend ceremony. I learn through the Three Fires Medewan Lodge, and so as our leaders were paying attention, um, the ceremony has evolved over time, and also made more strengthened connection. At least for me, the connection between the importance of different ceremony came or was strengthened through things like the water ceremony, and um, as well as the as the moon ceremony. And songs began to come some more as we continued to practice and strengthen and the connection to the ancestors of our leaders who are paying attention that way. um, we began to receive more direction and more instruction from spirit on how to change. So um, probably close to 20 years ago now is in our lodge when we began to open the ceremony up beyond just women to include our male relatives, especially during the winter moons. And because we really want to um, encourage and remind our male relatives that they also have a relationship um, with the moon. And that relationship was modeled for us as Anishinaabe by um, Wayne Bojo. And Wayne Bojo, um, he really really helped his grandmother at a time when she was barely surviving. And so um, and she was struggling to live, to have enough food, to have warmth. And Wasauksing um, um, spent time with her to nurse her back to health and to make sure that she had everything that she needed to have a to enjoy a good life. And so you can read more, and there's stories written that you can find. Actually, if you have a copy of the Moshomas book, there is there's a really good um, chapter about that relationship of Wasauksing and his grandmother. So, um, and that relationship also for us in our lodge too, it becomes has become part of our water ceremony, and so that we have our uncles and um, our brothers, our partners, and our sons and nephews assisting and um, in ceremony, and they and that's this is at the start, before we even sound and call the sound the water drum to begin our ceremony sessions. um, we're doing work for the water before our gathering even starts. And so it's our male relatives we ask to help. And again, it's reminding us about that relationship and the care that Wasauksing gave to his grandmother in back at a time when she um, really needed love and care and help to be able to live. Um, so so yeah, so at that those during these winter moons, there's four of them. Um, little bit just kind of little observe this moon that we're in, Chamanado Quagizis, Onabadan Gizis, and even to, I guess, depending on where you are and how much snow is left at that time, Zisbakado Kagizis, and that's usually about the end. But there are special, other additional special ceremony um, or just special aspects of the ceremony that happen in these winter moons, which we call our healing moons. And for those of you who have participated, um, you know, in in the ceremony, we make sure we tell that story about Wasauksing and his grandmother. And in these winter moons, we also share not just the strawberries, but we also share the other sacred foods. So the manomen and the uh, mindamen, the corn, so the rice and the corn, and a wild meat or a fish. So some moles or gigong. Somebody brought partridge one year, and that was really delicious. So, and it's just a time of sharing food and sharing, extending the ceremony and sharing story in the in a community setting. Um, and then when in the springtime, when the snow is melted and that next moon, we have return just to having, it's a gathering of women and perhaps a fire. Actually, at we've had probably a couple fire keepers at our fall ceremony gatherings, and mostly because men, and not just Anishinaabe men, but men from other international students who have come to Laurentian have made their way to the fire as well. Um, because they were curious. And so while we didn't open the circle to them, if they came in the spring, summer, or fall, we did invite them to go and sit with the firekeeper, um, and spend some time with the firekeeper. Um, and then they would, usually they left. Um, but um, but it's really interesting too with the international students have brought in the knowledge that they have shared with us. So there's reciprocity of sharing international Indigenous peoples' um, relationship with the moon. I don't know if I didn't see his name on here, I don't think, but there was a gentleman, um, and his name is Ham, and he's from Nepal, and he spent a lot of time in the Indigenous Sharing and Learning Center. He responded to the call of the big drum when when the men were learning songs in the round room or in the lobby area. He really enjoyed and was welcomed to participate in feasts and gatherings, and we really enjoyed his company. One of the things he did share about the relationship to the moon in Nepal was that they counted the number of moons that you lived, and um, and so once you had lived 1,000 full moons, um, which would put you around 80, I think. Um, but there was a celebration of for your life when you had celebrated or lived through those that many moons. And so and there was big it was a time of big celebration and feasting and gratitude, at the um, of being blessed to be able to live that long. And so that was really um, nice to hear how other globally, how other people's um, acknowledge and have relationship with the moon. So um, yeah, I don't know if anyone else here is from another part of the world, but um, if you if you get comfortable, I'm just watching. I'll watch the chat. So um, I'll watch the chat. But if anyone is from another part of the world and wants to is aware of moon ceremonies from your part of the world, and you feel comfortable to share a little bit, I'll just keep watching the chat. So just let me know if you're brave enough to do that. So, okay. I also, so yeah, and just talking to a little bit more in a few more recent years, in our lodge, the we've again evolved in our full moon ceremony, and again still including our all community in all the seasons that we do this, but again it strengthens us again to the relationship of our original ancestors um, and the universe. So, and again, uh, maybe we'll be able to do that close by or one time, but we'll you know, be able to share that hopefully soon. Hopefully, when we're done, um, um, when this pandemic has passed, we'll be able to share those kinds of things, um, and how things have developed some more. So, um, yeah, I do see some. I do see some comments, and okay, so, Sunny or Sony, Sunny, spent 10 years in China and learned about the Mid Autumn Festival, which they have a story between lovers. I don't know if it's Romeo and Juliet or like Romeo and Juliet. And she ends up on the moon, which is where mooncakes come from. Ah, mooncakes. Anyone else have enjoyed mooncakes? There was a movie I was watching with my son on Netflix, and there is a story about the moon celebration and the mooncakes. Um, were part of it, but yeah, the mooncake indicates the one day each year when the two moon and reflection are touching. Okay. Chang'e is one of them. Changi? I'm not sure if I said that right, Sunny. Okay. And then if you're reading the comments too, Sammy says, Ani, I'm same. I'm from Cape Croker. My niece is from Parent Island. Ojo Sam. Okay. Chang'e. Sunny, that's how you pronounce it. Chang'e. Chang'e. I'm might be mixing up my double vowel Fiero sounds with okay, Chang'e. So thanks for that, Sunny, and thanks for that reminder of that story. I had never heard of that either beyond this animation story, and I don't remember off the top of my head what it was called, but um, but I'm sure if you Google it, you will find it. But it's we got to watch half of it together, and then we have not been able to finish it yet. But okay, so so I also want to talk some of the work that I do also. It actually was in my immersion, my language immersion learning that I had taken a few years ago at Kenchgewin Tech at West Bay or Chaging on Manitoulin Island. And I hadn't really given it much thought, honestly, before this. I'd heard of the 13 moons. I knew we had these. I knew in some months we had more than one full moon, but I hadn't really paid attention to the to that 13th moon until I started to do some planning for the education organization that I founded with some other folks in in the Swakopmund area. So Gisons is one of them too, and she's actually part of our board, and so that organization is called Kenmo Shin, and it means teach me. And our goal is to one day have like a Anishinaabe centered education program, so daily learning, like a private school, I guess, kind of, but in a teaching lodge and outside. So that's our dream. And So, but in the planning, so we've been working for several years, and just trying to figure out where that 13th moon factors in, right? And so many of us, most of us, to function, with the rest of the world and with society, follow the Gregorian calendar, which was, you know, um, developed during the papacy of Pope Gregory. Um, you know, maybe I don't even know how long ago that was. 1300, 13th century or 12th century comes to mind, but could have been older than that. Um, so we follow this 12-month calendar, that was that's kind of become, the norm for society, and it only has, um, it only acknowledges 12 months. And so how do we, factor in what, that 13th moon in a 12-month calendar? um, so we began to think on it a little bit more and try to figure out how. um, Lots of communities, you'll see lots of calendars that are made, or um, in Anishinaabe, will use, will have names, for each of the months. So if you looked at a calendar, uh, and this month you opened it up to January, people would call this month, um, uh, sh- um, Shimanodogisis or Monodogisis, okay? But the big spirit moon. Um, but I guess the thing is that most months are 31 or 30 or 31 days, with the exception of February. Um, and and the new moon does not line up with the first of the month. So, in fact, in this calendar month, the new moon started on the 13th, so just last week, actually. And so that's when, um, I, and my family, marked that first day, was um, was the first day of that new moon, and that's when we marked, Shikamanado, or not Shikamanado Jesus, but yeah, Ushkamanado, the new moon, or Shkagizis, but Chimanado Jesus. That's when we marked it on the 13th, and then we, um, yeah, so we will follow the full moon will be, on around the 29th of January, and then the waxing, oh, the waning, sorry, waning and waxing. Um, anyway, then we'll start to, go into darkness again until the next new moon for, um, Makwagisis, which is typically when you open up a calendar that's been translated. People may use Makwagisis for February. So, um, yeah. So, but what to do about that 13th moon and where it falls? Because um, it doesn't always fall in the same period. And then what do you do? Because these moons have been translated to correspond, with, January, February, March, April. Um, and then you get a little, um, what do you call them? Um, what if, say, um, the it's really warm one year and the flowers bloom earlier than they do in the calendar. So do you stick with the calendar, or you know what do you do? So I had a conversation with my my ceremony uncle, Leland Bell, and I said, how how do I factor this all in? And he said that would be a very good research project. So, to follow the moons and see how that goes. So if any of you are thinking that, that might be. Um, yeah. Uh, okay. Hold on a second. I'm just looking at comments again. I'll get to those in a second there, Shirley and Sunny. Um, so what we agreed is that you really have to pay attention. Just because something's written into like translated or written in an Anishinaabe way of thinking about a month doesn't necessarily mean that that always holds up, right? When we're trying to match Anishinaabe worldview or understanding or paying attention with Eurocentric ways of relating to the world. Um, so, um, so when you know, and depending on where you are, the names of those translated months may be different because of what's happening in the environment and the attention that people are giving to the changes and to signal, when is these Bakado Kegisis? When is that really going to start? Is that going to start? Is that going to start at the beginning of April, or is that sap going to run, closer to the middle of March? So it'll depend. It'll depend on where you are when you call that moon, and it's not going to necessarily match any calendars made in different regions of what's Ontario or what is Quebec, or but the people who are doing that work will identify that, and by paying attention to what's happening. So they might not call these Bakadogis to start in April. It might be happening in March. So that's what we agreed. We agreed that paying attention is the best way. And just because it's written down that way in a calendar, you still got to pay attention to what's happening in creation to determine what month you're in, what moon you're in. So anyways, I'm going to turn my attention to these questions. We've got about 15 minutes left here. Shirley asked, do you offer up your prayer cloths to Grandmother Moon and then toss them in the fire afterwards? And Shirley, I wasn't going to get into a lot of like specific detail about the ceremony itself, because the best way to learn about those kinds of details is by coming to the ceremony when we're able to do it. And I know right now, you're if you are doing ceremony by yourself or with your family or whatever your safe bubble is right now, um, I think doing that with the best intention of that relationship with Nabagizis Nokmis is the, I think, the most respectful way to look and do that. So you are on the right track. And then I think when we're able to gather again safely, to make your way to a circle to full moon, like, just, I'm not sure where you're located, Shirley, but even just within the Swakamuck area, so Sudbury, Martina Oswamek, our auntie from Wikwemkwang. She does ceremony over there. Gison Sinai do ceremony over at Laurentian. Mary Elliott does ceremony sometimes over here in Adikamakshing, or Joan. They may be doing it together. So there's at least three fires that when it's safe together again, that there will be opportunity to um, um, just kind of strengthen and learn by participation that way. Okay. And then, oh, thanks to your comment, Sunny, about what education being the opportunity for Indigenous perspectives and curriculum. Yeah, we need to make sure that we have, um, you know, options. I have 4 children. 3 of them are grown, and through the their post secondary um, you know journey so far to where they've wanted to take it. And I have a 9-year-old, and my 9-year-old, you know, I am doing things for my 9-year-old the way had wished I had been able to do it for the older 3. Um, he's right now he's homeschooled because we don't have enough children to offer full time learning, but we're working towards that. So, but yeah, his day is um, is much different than the big 3, and his learning happens through the weekend, um, you know, and his learning doesn't necessarily happen between 8:45 and 3:20 in the day. So he's we're very flexible with his learning, and most of it is with language and being outside on the land. So yeah, and now that he's almost 10, we're starting to learn how to read English. And at the age of 10, he actually knows more English than I taught him. Or, I haven't taught him a whole heck of a lot, but he's managed to decode a lot of the English language already on his own. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. Okay. Um, let's see. So I hope that's okay. Um, I hope that's okay, Shirley. I would just say, just do do your best and be a respectful mind, and and grandmother will understand. And then when we're able to gather again, we'll be able to support each other uh, in person. Okay. Uh, Hale, do I have any advice for someone living far from other Indigenous peoples and active practices? Ah, hmm. Where do you live, Hale? Are you in the city? I don't know where Hale is, but I think um, I think when we're far from people, especially now with this, with the ability or the well, we've probably had the ability to do more. Like we've had Skype for a long time, right? Or quite a few years. But now it's just even more accessible and just more widely used. So if you can ask, a friend or a family member to help you connect, on a social, like a video platform, that might be one way. If you are close to an urban center, so you might even be able to contact somebody at, say, Shikakamekwe Health Center, because, elders working through those kinds of centers right now, or have a little bit more support to be able to navigate and understand and learn how to use Zoom to connect with people. So that might be something, is to reach out to an urban health center, um, who can um, you know um, put you in touch with somebody. Um, if I think, and you can check with Amy. Amy might be able to set up one-to-one. So, connect with Amy Commenda, and maybe there's one-to-one support that you could access through Laurentian if you're a student. Oh, you live. Oh my gosh, you live there near Atlanta. um, so, um, and then yeah, so I guess in Georgia, if you can research, um, indigenous um, organizations, and you might find someone there willing to provide some assistance. So it might be something like a Native American center, or a Native American health center. That might be something to try. Okay. All right. Okay. So Shirley, looks like I answered your question. Yeah. And yeah, just again, the best you can, with a good heart, based on what you remember from your previous participation, and um, and I don't when we do it like that, when we do it um, with that kind of respect and intention, just even about relationship, and just talking to the moon that way as well. I am learning to, we're learning to pay attention. We're learning um, to connect, with our with our grandmother, with you. If you're talking to the moon, and learning to connect, learning to understand, learning how I'm supposed to be in this relationship, and learning to recognize what she is in the relationship and what she does. Um, and right now the learning is slow, because we don't have that in-person connection, but so now we're relying more on a spiritual connection, and we're relying on um, you know talking more to our grandmother about understanding that connection. And when we do that, we will get we may get some of the answers that we need to carry us through until we're able to connect in person again. So okay, so one. Okay, when we're no longer in the moon cycle, yeah, we've moved. When we're no longer, as we've are progressing, and I'm also nearing that stage of my life as well, um, where grandmother, my role with grandmother is going to change, because when our moon times stop, then that's like a signal, of our changing role, as well as where we become um, like the grandmother, right? And the grandmother um, to share these kinds of teachings, um, and with for this ceremony in particular, um, I had a lot of support, encouragement, and I guess a instruction over the years. And then when I was ready to do this work at on campus at Laurentian, um, support from my mother and my auntie Edna. So Gisons and I both had their guidance and their tutelage to be able to share this with others, um, and then their endorsement to go out and do it because we had mentored, as their daughters for so long. Um, but as the grandmother, when even in our own families, then it's our responsibility to share this knowledge too with our daughters and granddaughters. And one day I really and great granddaughters, yeah, if I'm so blessed to be able to walk in creation that long. So okay, so yeah, so um and if you don't if you haven't had the opportunity to learn a lot of those things, you feel still like still very young in your knowledge. It's sharing what you can, in as in a kind grandmother way. I was blessed to have a really good relationships with my grandmothers who were very kind, very patient, um, and they didn't. My grandmothers didn't pass the ceremony down. Moon ceremonies were not done. Um, in my early childhood in my community. But some of the women, just a generation, like my father's generation of his cousins and relatives in our community, um, ceremonies to mark the change from childhood to womanhood, and they did hold on to those puberty rights for women, especially. Um, but but in that, while it was still practiced, um, I think it was also very hard because a lot of the practices that they did had to be done in secret, uh, or risk going to jail. So my, when I was doing my berry fast, it was time of celebration, and I was celebrated. In the time of my aunties and my grandmother, it was not. It was not so. They didn't feel that kind of love and sacredness. Um, so, um, but it was still done. It was still done, and fortunately, um, in my generation, I was able to experience something different. It had switched. Something had switched, and we made our way to people um, who showed us, the beauty of those puberty rights for women, and that's what we've been able to carry forward and share with other women. So it's now 2:01, and I don't know if there's any last minute questions. Just gonna scroll through. Um, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Illegal, Sunny. Yeah. Lots of, just to do some very simple things. Um, we had to practice at night, deep in the bush, or or hide it within um, the new religion, their new religious ceremonies or observances. Um, so yeah. So thank you for joining me, everyone. That's what I have to share today. And yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Julia, for coming today, and thank you to everyone for attending. We're so grateful again to have you share some of your knowledge that you've um, have to share with others. And oh,
Mm, that's me. That's all my notifications. I got to update stuff over on my computer updates. Sorry.
so stay tuned for our future sessions. Feel free to follow us on our Facebook page, Indigenous Student Affairs. We're looking at inviting some other knowledge carriers and elders such as Gisels, that Julia, her sister, and we hope that you're able to come again. All right, and we wish you a wonderful weekend.
Mhm. Wai Wene. Miigwech. Miigwech Gibishayek.